No problem. Thank you, Randy. And if audio drops out at any time, just let me know. So again, thank you for the opportunity. It's again, challenging times training-wise, right? So before I dive too far into this, let's go back down memory lane. Think back to your first day, your first week at the office. For me, I was very fresh out of UND. I mean, newly minted diploma meteorologist out of UND, 22 years old. Just recently engaged to my wife. I remember it was a rainy day in Bismarck, North Dakota, where I spent the last 12 years. I was getting settled into my rather unspacious efficiency apartment. And I've had over a year of experience as a SCEP and even more as a volunteer as well. So, but I also showed up to work at the office, right? And that's not the case anymore. So the context of all this is here at Duluth, we've onboarded 4 new hires since February. So we onboarded 1 in February, and then I had a few weeks with them, and then COVID hit. Then we onboarded 1 in April, 1 in May, and then just 1 on Monday. So their experience has been dramatically different than what has been the case, well, since over the past decades, right, of how we onboard people. So the training environment, as we knew it, it went out the window in March. So that's brought both challenges, but also forced us to be kind of creative and take new approaches to our new hire training. And a lot of this is, outlined, whether it's in the roadmap, talking about, faster integration and of our employees from the 5 through 12 progression, and now the recently released MDP, or Meteorologist Development Plan. So that's kind of the base to all this, but it's, well, how do we approach this and implement this within kind of this COVID era as well? So it's really a balancing act, right? At this moment of how do we balance both individual and the whole office safety and individual and whole office growth. We can't take unnecessary risks, but we can't afford to just keep our new hires on the bench for months and months and months either. So it's a balance of the safety of the office while at the same time plugging holes with vacancies and onboarding new people to allow us to get trained up and ready to take some of the burden of that staffing vacancies can have. So balancing safety with balancing the growth of the office. So this process, it's more than just developing a forecaster. We're developing a whole person, a whole professional. I view it as a mix of grad school, the NWS onboarding process, as we'll kind of talk about here in a little bit, of getting some of the kind of graduate level operational meteorology topics. So there's definitely a component of that. There's a component of very technical training, right? Just very nuts and bolts buttons and knobs and things like that. A lot of it is professional coaching. We onboard outstanding people, but they may not have had a lot of the mentoring opportunities or professional development or coaching that a lot of us have been afforded throughout the years within this agency. And that really gets also to kind of beyond the forecast mentoring, all right, a development of an entire person, of getting to know them as a person, getting them to an understanding of who they are. It's sometimes as simple as, our new hires, it's dealing with insurance and tax questions. When you're first onboarding, how does all this work? You may have never had to work into that stuff, or just kind of some of the random stuff of life as you transition from college into the professional world. So it's this real whole mix of, we're not just trying to cram their full of technical information. It's really a holistic approach to developing them as a person and as a professional in our agency. So what we've kind of adopted as a result of COVID is a 3-stage process. So stage 1 is virtual onboarding, and we generally take them through that for around 3 weeks to 4 weeks. And we'll go through each of these in more detail. Then what we've done is stage 2, we dive in. It's an emphasis on this immersive operational experience, and it's 6 to 8 weeks with me and them on the ops floor, and a lot of times it's just the two of us. And we want to get they need to be 100% efficient or proficient at the end of 6 to 8 weeks? No. 100% efficiency is probably never attained for all of us, and it's really years of process. But I think it's important that they don't need to have 100% efficiency to have a near immediate impact, and we'll go through that. And then the challenge of all this is when we go to stage 3, when I retreat back to my basement, and we get them into the 5 through 12 rotation. So that's kind of the overarching kind of summary. So that stage 1, that virtual onboarding, it's not only the insurance and tax paperwork, but we kind of go back to class. This is what I mean by grad school within our onboarding. That we have this virtual lecture series that we spend every day. We try to give them a really great base foundation in all aspects of WFO life, and we connect them to all the office program managers. At the same time, we're making sure first 3 weeks, get done with your aviation and get done in our case with Marine. So when we hop into the office, you are ready to go on taps to start playing around with them. You're ready to go to start interacting with Marine. But again, the stage 1, this back to class, like 3-week grad school crash course in WFO life, and that's what we really treat it as. One thing that is really important, and probably some of the new hires that I've worked with, we've hired outstanding, but they probably get tired of seeing me. But being present in all this, it's the top priority. I mean, how else can you build a relationship, and especially virtually? So it's hangout chat, hangout chat, hangout chat the whole day. That's what we do for the first 3 weeks. It's not just abandoning them to the modules. It's taking every opportunity to teach them something. And a lot of times I have to teach myself some of these things again, and teach myself how to teach them, because it just gets to be so innate after so many years. One thing that I've noticed that I think has been a benefit of all this extended telework is that it's helped me to be more intentional with communicating, making sure that I'm present. But don't just abandon the modules. Hangout chat, that over and over and over again, they are with you, and they feel like you're right there with them. I think that's very important. A lot of our new hires, they're moving to places on their own, just getting started in life, right? And there's a lot going on besides just trying to get DLAC 1 and 2 done. So kind of one thing we also try to emphasize during this time are these mini Meso-A sessions and event reviews of being opportunistic, like the ice storm and across the Southern Plains, of taking advantage of weather outside of our CWA to demonstrate tools and concepts, because a lot of times the weather doesn't always afford you the best training opportunities when we're quiet. So taking advantage of these kind of mini Meso-A sessions, spur of the moment, fire up a hangout, let's talk about some of this stuff. It gives them a break from the modules, it gets them interacting, gets them thinking, and just kind of seeing these new tools and ways of looking at data that they may not have had much experience with interacting, especially within their coursework. So this has been a really big win, and something that even some of our senior, more seasoned forecasters do enjoy, getting together and breaking out the map discussion again. And let's talk about these things. We found, this is not just in COVID, but in everything, of talking day one of what their career goal is. And that doesn't lock them in forever what they're going to be, but I want to know what you want to do on day one so I can be on the lookout for opportunities to get you there. Try and get them quick wins of, you worked hard on a senior project or a master's thesis. You present that to our staff. It gets you a safe way to, present and feel good doing that. And getting them on a team right away, whether it's the WCM or SU team or climate team, whatever team they want to be on. It's connecting the opportunities to lead, to learn, and to share. And that's day one. So kind of what does this look like? And it's stage 1 to stage 2, right? At stage 1, kind of that grad school kind of approach, that virtual onboarding, and then what we've tried, and there's been bumps, but we dive in with this immersive, intensive operational experience, and we'll talk about how that looks staffing wise. But that first 3 weeks in the teal is hangout lecture series. It's weather service grad school. It's teach, teach, teach. It's get your aviation, your marine done. If you're an upper air office like I used to be at, getting your upper air out of the way, and let's be ready to roll. So when we get into the office, somewhere around week 4 or whatever, depends on we can be flexible here, that we can hop into putting the modules aside for 6 to 8, 9 weeks, and let's solely focus on operations. And it all depends on, like we'll discuss, on whether they've been a volunteer or if they haven't. Those first couple weeks, it's basically on the ops floor, those weeks 4 to 6, it's mastering the IDSS desk. And why can you do that? Because you don't need to really use GFE to do that. People are already adept at making PowerPoints. They're already adept at handling social media. It's kind of learning some data QC and getting used to AWIPs if you need that. We also want to get them right away, leading the morning briefing and doing it every single day. Getting them writing text products. You don't necessarily need to do the grids to be able to write an HWO and AFD, and those are great tools to gain an understanding of how you're thinking and approaching the process of the forecast, and how we can correct that if needed. We get in kind of the second row, that the week 7 through 8 and 9, it's half time, right? And finally, we get into the grids as we get into the later weeks. But again, as we'll highlight in the end, the grids are the last thing we teach. You can do so much without the grids, and so much of what we do isn't the grids anymore either. But it's building this foundation of weeks 1 through 3 so that we can, when we dive into the office, we're diving in, and it is like operations boot camp kind of. It's challenging for them. It's challenging for me. It's hard work for both of us. But it really provides an outstanding experience. So how do we get in the office in COVID? Well, it's a team approach to clearing the way. We found that coordinating weeks out with the day shift Mets, and they've been great about, we'll abandon our day shifts, we'll retreat back to telework so that you and the new hire can get in the office. If our new hire has student volunteer or AWIPS experience, we can pretty much just the two of us, and we did, just dive in, just the two of us on shift together. If they don't necessarily have volunteer or AWIPS experience, we can flex that, phase 0.5, where we can have maybe a little more than just the 2 forecasters on the ops floor to kind of get them used to AWIPS. But it's really, even then now, it depends on the numbers, and flexing to 0.5 is maybe not the best option for probably a lot of us in our current COVID situations in our areas. So is it ambitious? Absolutely, it's ambitious. It's challenging, but there's no better way to then just immerse yourself in doing all this. 3 or so weeks of lectures and familiarization hangouts pave the way to doing this. It's welcome to the office. Welcome to the first day actually in the office. And you want to write the AFD? Why not? You're a meteorologist. You can write the AFD. And that telework help is just a chat or phone call away. There's mutual aid that's supporting us in the office. And it all depends on how busy the weather is. If we have a busy weather day, we can certainly flex up. But diving in. It's really about, we got to give our new hires a chance to get ready so they can be ready to enter the 5 through 12 rotation. So the only way they're going to be ready is if we give them a chance to be ready. Some quick wins that we found, I put in quotes long-term AFD because some of us just write kind of combined, just dot discussions, but writing them the long-term AFD ASAP. I mean, it's easier to write than the short-term. A lot of these concepts are easily transferable from their synoptic classes, pattern recognition. A lot of times you can see that break apart this GFS versus EC way of thinking and get them interacting with other tools and probabilities. I mean, you can write the AFD. It's a paragraph summary of large land patterns. Write that. You know, it's not as much of an emphasis on the grids in the long term as it is crafting a message. And to be honest with you, it feels good to get your name on a product, right? It's kind of that, you know, that badge of honor that put that AFD on the fridge with your name on it. You know, they are excited when they get their name on an AFD. So it's a quick win, gets them really feeling good about that they're involved in the process. Again, they can do it day one. You don't need to edit grids to be able to write the long-term AFD of telling what the patterns and the impacts are going to be. We get a briefing early and often on the morning briefing. Do it every single day, the operations stand-up briefing. Why? Well, you learn how to brief, you learn how to develop talking points from day one. That's a skill to be had. And it gets them thinking like a lead. You know, you're going to have to, you know, when you make the morning briefing, it's not just the weather, it's admin, it's systems topics, it's IDSS topics, you know, all this that you keep track of, especially as a lead forecaster, forces you to engage with a lot of that stuff. So get them briefed early and often. The last thing we worry about are the grids. It really is the last thing that we worry about. And as we said before, you don't need extensive GFE skills to do pretty much the majority of what we do. Writing the FD, writing the HWO, creating weather stories. Yeah, you got to maybe use the grid image maker, but you know, that's pretty simple. Creating social media content, managing that, you can get them help making sit reps. You can monitor the taps. You can do the morning ops briefing. You do climate data and hydro duty. So what 90% of what goes on in the ops floor, you can do without teaching GFE. And GFE is the toughest to teach, not because it's the most complex of kind of science topics to master. It's because there's so many knobs, buttons, and tools. And you're getting better at kind of managing that, especially with Forecast Builder. There's still a lot there. And so GFE is the last thing we worry about. And then the hardest part is when it's time for me to retreat back to the basement and we evaluate, say at the end of 9 to 12 weeks. Again, not at 100% proficiency, but they can pretty much stand the IDSS shift. They can help out with TAFs. They can do especially some blue sky grid updates. So they can really make a big impact. So when I'll retreat back, now it's a big mentoring role, especially in COVID, on the leads and 12s. I just can't be there every day to train. So for me, it's providing them a lot of feedback remotely on their products, Google Docs marked up with comments in a good way, not to beat them down, but they really appreciate those comments and trying to learn. How do you craft some of these text products? It's an art, drills and to reinforce concepts and seeking feedback from the leads and the 12s. That's huge because I can't see exactly what's going on all the time. For me, it's okay. As we took that 6 to 8 to 9 week break from the modules, now it's back to getting in that, making sure we're getting our big ticket training items, fire weather, rack, walk, all that done. Staying present. I've caught myself where I haven't talked to them in a few days. And it's like, you know what? Every day I need to make sure I'm talking with them, whether it's on a hangout, whether it's just at the end of shift, how did it go? Being present. And something that we've really instilled with our staff, because it is a workload, especially on the leads and 12s, is it's a long-term mindset. It's a lot of investment and mentoring, and the workload does increase on the ops floor as we're trying to spin them up rapidly. But it's a massive long-term gain. And for us, having a complement of 4, meteorologists who are already doing great, really is building up our capacity for the future. And we got to build that capacity at some time. Might as well build it now. And so there's definitely some short-term pain in trying to get in the investment part of all this. But the long-term payout is massive. We would position ourselves to really be set up very, very well for the future. And when you're giving the people the opportunity to mentor others, that's huge for their own development. That's great for them as well. Challenging for sure. One thing that has been the challenge, with being aggressive and getting them into the rotation is there's a lot of moving parts. So one thing that we try to instill, I stole this quote from Greg Mann, is your job on shift is to set up the next shift for success. So really trying to instill that in them. And it's what we found is that we need an end of shift checklist of gotchas at the end of the shift because there's so many moving parts that these gotchas that we can look at for making sure that that next shift is set up for success. And so a simple end of shift checklist. It's not just following the shift duties, but sometimes you just need that at the end. Am I good? So that my next shift is going to be good. And that's, I think, the biggest challenge is that it's so much work for them to get through the shift sometimes that we're, okay, pause at the end, make sure you're setting the next shift up for success. And that was a lesson learned on my end. And so that's something that we got feedback from our leads on. Talked about kind of that, entrance into the 5 through 12 rotation. We give them this comprehensive midterm exam of all those topics you see on the left, which is everything from admin, what am I doing with time, attendance, and leave, and benefits, and things like that, to every single program. I mean, it's not, it's a comprehensive midterm. We go over it together. It's open book because no one has all this stuff memorized, but we give them this comprehensive midterm of just seeing where you are. If you need more time, but we want to be aggressive. It doesn't always go well. A lot of lessons learned along the way. So we're on our 4th new hire now. We've kind of slowly perfected it. We're still learning. Things didn't always go well. I especially feel bad for the first new hire that we brought on board. Lessons learned, having all the documentation prepped, whether it's electronic, whether it's like a toolbox for them of links and guides, having all that prepped, sometimes having to make it on the fly. That's kind of bogged the process down sometimes. For me, the GFP training time investment, it's a lot. And it's a lot for the leads and the 12s who are also mentoring them. So sometimes underestimating that. That is getting better with NBM and Forecast Builder and things like that. It's a challenge for us having 4, actually now 5 if we include a new hire who's been in about a year. They're all at different stages, all of them. And they all learn a little different. They all want to interact a little different. Some we set up a Q&A. We just have a running every week or so. I just load me up with questions. And the others are different. So it's trying to keep track of everybody. And especially having that full understanding of how each new hire is continuing to develop in the office when I'm in my basement. That has been a really big challenge. And so that's that big communication with our leads. So that's pretty much all I have. It's a process still to be perfected. We got our newest new hire, day 3 of this 3 to 4 week onboarding process. Weather service grad school essentially. And we're going to be ready, clearing the schedule away so we can dive in intensively and put the modules aside for 6 to 12 or 9 weeks somewhere, whatever we decide to take, and but the modules will be there. Let's get interacting and build you up so that you can have an immediate near-term impact. And this, this is lessons that I've taken from my previous office too. And the biggest challenge, something that we still probably need the most tweaks on, is when we get to stage 3. Being aggressive and getting to stage 3 and entering them in the 5 through 12 rotation. There's still some bumps there. It's still hard, especially in this telework state, to keep track on everybody. We've kind of developed something that I got to send out to my leads, is kind of these development trackers, so that they know what they've been exposed to, what they haven't. So whether it's a busy weather day and boy, we shouldn't assign that task because I don't have time to mentor today, or you know what, I got time to mentor today. Let's go over that topic that I see you haven't gone over. So not perfect, lessons learned along the way. There's been bumps, but there's also been quite a bit of success as well. So I will leave it there and open it up to any questions.